Studio 10. Well, we hear a lot about housing affordability, and for many people in their 20s, 30s or even 40s, the thought one day of owning a home might seem like more of a fantasy than reality, but not for Eddie Dilleen. He bought his first home when he was 18 and he was working at Macca's. He's now 27 and owns 16 properties, and Eddie says if he can do it, anyone can. Please welcome Eddie Dilleen to Studio 10. Nice to see you. Now, before we run through your incredible property portfolio, tell us a little bit about your history, because you certainly weren't born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You didn't have all this help from your parents. What's your background?
I guess I first became interested in property from a teenager, really. Growing up, came from a pretty poor family. No one in my family actually owned a property at all. So for me, that was my kind of driving factor. I felt at the time that we didn't have that security there, and I thought, hey, in the future, I definitely don't want that to be the same. So I started working at McDonald's when I was about 16 years old, still in school, and saved up for a couple of years and finally had enough to buy that first property. Mount
Druitt in Western Sydney, a working class suburb. Your mum, single mum, on the pension, so you were really doing this all on your own. Let's go through your portfolio. Run us through your properties and how much they're worth. You started with this one?
So that was actually my 10th one. But that one right there, the first property I basically bought, was $138,000. That one was on the Central Coast, so that was the first one I bought in Wyong.
And everybody said you were a bit crazy because that wasn't seriously fashionable then. So what made you go ahead with it?
I guess it came down to a lot of different things, but the main thing was affordability. Like, I just wanted to get my foot in the market, and I really wanted a house with land, because that's what everyone says, you want a house, the backyard and all that kind of stuff. But at the time, I couldn't afford it, so I just thought, hey, it's better to buy maybe a two-bedroom unit just to get my foot in the door.
Can I ask, how much did you save up while working at Macca's? How much did you manage to save, and how did you do that?
Yeah, so the rough deposit was about $20,000. Yeah. I saved that up over about, say, a 2-year period time.
How?
Well, at the time, I was about 16 when I first started working at McDonald's. I was still kind of in school at that stage, but that was when really my passion for property started. So I started saving about $200 per week. About 2 years later, I had about that $20,000 mark.
Wow. And the bank looked at you seriously, didn't say, you're just a kid, get out of my office?
At first, some did, yeah. But after a while, I just did a lot of research about what banks would be the best.
Yep.
Really tried to educate myself as much as possible. And finally, one said, hey, you can borrow a certain amount, and that was kind of my lower price range.
So how are you going to pay it back? Well, you've got this mortgage, you've got your $20,000 deposit, paying it back. Were you nervous about interest rates?
Well, at the time, the interest rates were about 7 or 8% back then. So at the time, I was a little bit nervous as my first one. I think everyone is when they first buy their first property, but it was rented at the time. So I bought that as an investment property purely, and that one back then was about $138,000. It rented for $220 a week. This is almost 10 years ago now. But that rent covered the expenses. And I had things like landlord insurance in case anything went wrong as well. So I thought, hey, it's better to take action rather than to sit on the fence.
A certain demographer caused headlines around the world recently when he said that young people were spending too much money on smashed avocado on toast instead of saving up for a house. Was it hard for you? Did you have to deprive yourself of a lot to put all that money away? And did you it must have been hard when you had your friends and other young people going around spending money on, whatever young people spend money on. Were you basically putting all your money away and then depriving yourself of your youth?
Yeah, look, for me...
Well, fun times, youthful exuberance.
It was a bit of both, and people say you can have your cake and eat it too, but during that period of time, it was a good probably, 2 to 6 year stint where I really tried to buy as many properties as I could. I did work really hard. I worked 2 jobs. One time I was working full-time during the day, and that night I work as a bartender. I only did that for a certain amount of time because everyone's got to have, rest and relaxation. But after a while, I just stopped doing that, and then I just take it easy. So definitely did a lot of sacrifices.
We often hear young people complain that they've been completely priced, particularly out of the Sydney market, that there's no way they can afford a $1 million 2-bedroom property. What do you say to them?
Look, I'd say it's definitely still possible. Like today in this market, the interest rates have recently been cut, and there's what I found. Like I've diversified my portfolio in different capital cities. I always like to stick to capital cities like Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Gold Coast, etc. But Sydney and Melbourne, you know, it is quite expensive. But you can also, if someone's looking to get started, you could buy something maybe more affordable in Brisbane as an investment property to start off with. You can pick up properties.
So don't buy a house to live in. Get on the property ladder just by getting an investment property first. Like your first home's probably not going to be
you paying
in
rent?
central Sydney.
Well, I was 16, I wasn't paying rent at that stage, but yeah. So this, I definitely believe it's, you know, you can do that and definitely get started. Like that's what really worked best for me is like starting off small and gradually building up, because everyone wants that kind of $1 million property right away, and there's other strategies you can do to get there.
Do you live in a mansion now?
No, not a mansion.
Like you live in your own home, a house with land?
Absolutely, yeah. I bought now in Parramatta, New Sydney. So
Fantastic.
Let's do the how-to here.
Yeah, you have some great tips for getting onto the property ladder. Let's run through those. Start off small. Your first property is probably not going to be a gorgeous terrace in the middle of Sydney. Go to the underlying suburbs. Don't get emotional about where you buy. Be strategic.
Yes, definitely.
The next one is focus on rental return. So is that buying a place that's going to generate enough rent so all your costs are covered?
Exactly right. So a good rental yield, and this is the kind of stuff that I did a lot of research in when I was first getting interested, but, you know, people think of 4%, 5% interest yield is pretty good, whereas I always aim for 7, 6, like 6, 7, 8 kind of percent. So it's going to take care of all expenses.
Buy property below market value. What do you mean by that?
What I mean by that is, I guess, there's always a range to what a property would sell for, in my opinion. That's what I've kind of learnt over the years. You know, some people, if they need to sell a property quite urgently, might be for a good reason or a bad reason. One scenario recently, a couple, they were buying a bigger house and they needed to offload 2 of their investment properties within 40 days.
So it's a bargain.
They dropped the price, of course. And if you can, you know, buy those kind of properties, then you kind of can make money right away.
And last tip is this, read property investment books, which is, funnily enough, you have one. An ebook. It's available now. You can get it.
Yes,
10 properties by 25. You can head to eddiedilleenproperty.com.au to download that. Gee, your mum must be proud of you.
I think so, yeah.
Oh, Eddie, thank you so much for joining us.
Congratulations. Thank you, guys.
Okay, how 7-year-old Emily is handling menopause. Yes, she is just 7 years old. She